And the first chapter is about power and violence. So there's power, and power within Niklas Luhmann's systems theory is pretty much that what politics is all about, right? So in politics, everything is about power. It's not about saving the world or anything, right? It's about power. So this is the main thing. All the communication, all the observations in the political system, so to speak, are about power. So in power in systems theory basically means that you can set the necessary preconditions. That's kind of how it's worded in this abstract way, you know. You set necessary preconditions, you set a frame of what could be, right? The necessary preconditions, and these necessary preconditions, kind of like a frame, they narrow down what can be displayed or what can be emerging, right? Necessary preconditions, and if you set these necessary preconditions or these necessary preconditions for certain possibilities in a society, these possibilities become more likely to happen, right? For example, if you don't pay workers decently, there probably is more stealing going on because people are literally, having trouble to pay their rent, having trouble to buy groceries, right? So this is a frame in which we're living, right? And it has a certain outcome. There's a certain consequence to it, right? So, and you can set this frame on purpose. It's not just coincidental, right? This is politics, setting the framework so certain things happen in a certain way, or at least they are more likely to happen because the necessary preconditions for these possibilities are precisely set in a certain way. That's what politics does. That is what power means. Okay? So if I can make you do stuff just by setting the necessary preconditions, setting the frame of what you can actually do, just by setting that frame, it is more likely that you act within this frame. It is kind of the path of the least resistance, right? People just go along with where's the least resistance, basically. So if you set the necessary preconditions, if you set the frame, the kind of guidelines of society, or how do you say this? The necessary preconditions of what you can do, you know? If you have to work a 40-hour day job, to just scrape by and barely make it, and you can't even have good, healthy food and stuff like that, that's a problem, right? And it leads to frustration, it leads to lower frequencies, lower consciousness, anger, frustration, poverty, all that jazz, has a effect on people's consciousness. And if you lower the frequency of the consciousness, right, you're not doing it like directly. But if you make a society in a certain way that, I don't know, what is it now, 60, 70% live in kind of poverty, right? And 1% has it all. And, right, that's, if you make a society like that, you have consequences, and is it random? No, it's politics, Even if not everybody knows what he's doing with all the consequences, there's a system at play, and that system is the political system. It operates as the generalized communication medium, so to speak, within power, right? Power means I'm setting, or the necessary preconditions of certain possibilities are set in a way to make these possibilities more likely to happen. And if you want to suppress a society, for example, through guilt, fear, shame, through frustration, through a lack mindset, through 40-hour work weeks, plus whatever overtime, plus if you have a family, you're pretty much working all the time, right? So this is a system that pushes down your frequency, pushes down your consciousness. The level of your consciousness is lowered in frequency by constantly living in a lack mentality, survival mode, guilt, fear, shame, right? And if you can kind of set the stage for that to happen, that is a very manipulative and oppressive political move within the political system. And again, power doesn't mean that I force you to do something, right? If I force you to do something, I take your options away. There are no longer possibilities. So I'm forcing one actuality on you by forcing you to do it, right? Violently, directly. But I'm taking away the optionality. There's no selection happening. So these are not possibilities, they are forced actuality. So that's not power, that's force, by definition, so to speak. Because power is precisely that you choose out of a spectrum of options or selectivity a certain option that I want you to choose. That is power. People are choosing a certain way, or not even choosing a certain way, but if your frequency is lowering because you're constantly in guilt, fear, shame, or stress, or survival mode, that's more like a consequence. But you still had, technically, a cynic would say, oh, you could still have meditated, right? You could have an enlightenment and be super zen about it, right? And just solved all your problems with positive thinking, something like that. That's very cynical to say. I'm not saying that at all. But technically speaking, you would have a choice to do so, right? It's not very likely that this would happen. And it certainly didn't happen to me when I was going through my dark night of the soul, so to speak, right? But you still have this opportunity or this possibility. So technically speaking, you still have a choice. So nobody's forcing you into it directly. You tapped into this trap and you're kind of forcing yourself into it. That's structural power within the political system. Very important. So that's what I got for chapter 1. See you in chapter 2.